Welcome back to the $0 Landlord Boot Camp, where you can learn how to buy property for $0 out of pocket. So, quick overview, we are trying to teach a $15,000 course for zero that ends up actually paying you at the end of the day. And this is designed to enable anybody to go buy multifamily property for zero out of pocket. Now, really, I'm more so interested in just bringing resources, trust, and just common sense back into real estate, and that's through preselling.com. So, here's a quick case study. I overpaid by 34% for a $335,000 property. Most people wouldn't do that, but I ended up doing $0 down. Because I did $0 down, I was also later on able to have the opportunity to fix it up for $0. Then I got the property appraised and it was worth $800,000 1 year later. I still have to work with the partners and I have 40% ownership. And that means after about 21 minutes a week, 100% from a computer, then I have $10,000 an hour rate. Here's top 25 jobs in the US, and they don't even come close, even if you add them up all together, and even if you multiply it by 4. So I know how to work efficiently is all I'm trying to say, and I want to teach you how to do the exact same thing. I've done this over a dozen times. You can go online to preselling.com and make your own opinion. So here's what I did in year one is I bought 1 unit using my money. Yay, cool, good for me. Then year 2, I bought 51 units with other people's money. Year 3, I bought 10 units with my money. And then I finally learned my lesson, which is, okay, I really need to go back and start buying with other people's money. So 96% of the stuff I bought has been with other people's money with $0 out of pocket. And I'm estimated to be in the top 200 mobile home park buyers in the US. And you can see everything else on preselling.com. So make your own opinion. But 6 of my partners have already made their opinion because they like it because they got their first deal for $0 out of pocket when they close with me. There's no gurus or gotchas here. I'm just trying to teach this stuff literally for free. And if you want to partner with me one day, cool, great, awesome, then I guess we can all make money together. So I have typically the same ownership as my partners as well. This isn't like a, hey, you need to work for 1%. You should be willing to work for 1% if it's your first deal, but I'm not going to do that to you. And my partners have made literally millions. So I am trying to teach you how to do this stuff. Everybody that's done it so far has made, or I'm sorry, the majority of people that have done it so far have over 100 rentals in their first year, but everybody does have rentals. So quick background about me. I was at U.S. Air Force Academy grad. I did 5 years in the Air Force as an officer. That's me on the green arrows. Then I ended up saving a lot of money for the taxpayers by overhauling the way that we handle our nuclear munitions, essentially. So then I proceeded to do, say, a similar type of thing, but wrapping up a project really, really early, and it was for a $7 billion program. So while I was good at my W-2 job, I lacked freedom. So the real reason I'm making this is because I want to make sure that you can get your freedom, and so that you don't have to spend the years suffering in order to figure this stuff out like I did. Because I lost out on money, friends, and events just so I could learn this stuff. There's like so many things I missed out on. I wish I was present for those, but I didn't have a community to help me out in order to learn this stuff. So I made a free community. Make sure to join it. This link's going to be in the bio description, wherever else. It's all on the website as well, where you can learn how to do this stuff too, and you can get on your own path, or you can suffer like I did. So here's a QR code. Go ahead and pause the video, scan it, whatever. Otherwise, go in the description. So pre-close operations. So if you've done everything to date, I would highly recommend you watch all the other modules. But if you're looking at what do I need to do right before I close a property, this is the right video for you. So pre-closing tasks. You want to set up your registered agent. So what is a registered agent? It's somebody that receives legal notices on behalf of the LLC, which is your company. You can get one online. They're about $50 a year typically. And they keep you mostly anonymous because they're handling a lot of that paperwork for you. They receive notices. They don't have your name on there. But you can also just be the registered agent yourself. It's 100% free. You got to be in the same state though, typically, and it is not anonymous. So everybody knows James Bond. You can have your name out there, but you're not going to be a very good secret agent, basically. So pre-closing tasks that you need to do. Other ones would be LLC online directly. You can totally pay Zen Business or whatever to go start your LLC, but it takes like less time actually just to go through the Secretary of State website for whatever state it is you're doing. And there's not going to be that extra fee. It's not that complicated. People just get in their heads about it. Also, if you don't know what LLC state to get it in, usually just do it in the one that you're buying the property in. That is like the most simple way to do it. Simplest, I suppose, right? You can also just do a Wyoming LLC. That is totally fine. They have some anonymity protections essentially for owners, but you got to make sure you do your taxes correctly if you do it like that. So make sure you're talking with a CPA and make sure that you do not use numbers or punctuation in your LLC. There's a lot of like systems out there like bank applications and loan applications and stuff like that, that if you put in numbers or punctuation, it screws it up and it doesn't allow you to actually get through and apply to whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I would highly recommend you just call it ABC Holdings LLC or whatever. You can also get your EIN online directly. What is an EIN? It is basically your company's social security number. That is what all lines of credit would run through for that. That's also saying Again, it's basically a social security number. It's just an identifier for your company. So you should not have to pay for it, though. There are a lot of services out there that will get it for you if you pay $100. But you can just get it for free directly from the IRS. If you look it up, make sure to go to irs.gov. You will find it on there. However, this is the actual literal link that you can go to with the literal QR code that you can scan. So if you were looking to get an EIN, do not pay for it. It is not something you have to pay for. The IRS will just give it to you for free. Okay, what bank account do you use? I would highly recommend that you do Wells Fargo because they allow for remote opening with other partners. There are a few banks out there that do stuff like that, but then they don't have like the physical locations. So the only bank that I know of right now that allows you to open a business checking account with a partner that is in a different state than you are, and they allow you to do it remotely without everyone having to fly into the same location and sign in person. The only one that I found to date is Wells Fargo. Every other location or every other service that may offer remote opening does not have a physical location you can actually go to. So that's why we pick Wells Fargo. I don't get a kickback or anything. I'm sure, it'd be amazing if I had a corporate sponsor by Wells Fargo, but no, that's, we just legitimately are a fan of it. So most other banks, though, again, they don't allow that. Bank of America, I don't know why on earth they thought it was a good idea not to allow that because there's a ton of transactions, but they don't have that capability. Also, it's really easy to use, and you can have all of your LLC accounts on one spot. That's why we have that as our standard bank account service that we use. We don't use other banks, basically. Every time we also would just open a business checking account. You do not need a personal whatever account with Wells Fargo. I would recommend it just because it's easier, but you do not need a personal account. You need a business account. And you do not need a savings account. You need a checking account. Savings accounts are kind of stupid, in my opinion. I have a lot of thoughts on it. It's like, why would you have money laying around that you don't need or that you don't have invested? You may as well put it into something. But if you do want to have savings, just leave it in your checking account. The reason why is because one account's simpler, one account's cheaper usually, and then also savings accounts typically have limitations, like you can only do 6 withdrawals per month. So you really should probably just have checking accounts for everything because you're going to have a lot of transactions going on. So this is kind of what it looks like, and you'll have all of your bank accounts all listed out on Wells Fargo, and they're all tied to different companies. So that's my personal view of my Wells Fargo, but my business partners don't have access to my accounts unless I specifically have instructed Wells Fargo, hey, this guy is a percent owner of this company account. Make sure that he gets it on his profile. So very easy to use. I would highly recommend you start with Wells Fargo, and then if you really want to use Bank of America or whatever else later, sure, you can graduate to that. But for now, just keep it really simple. Just literally just use Wells Fargo. Okay, so if you are buying a property, you need to get property management because it will significantly increase your dollar an hour. You will not be having to deal with nearly the same amount of issues if you're that you would be dealing with if you're directly managing with the tenants. So if you get property management, have 3 manager options ready in advance. So a real big issue that will happen is if you have to fire your manager, you put an ad out there on, Facebook groups for property managers, Amarillo, Texas, or whatever, then your property manager is probably going to see your ad. They're going to say, "What the heck is that?" Right? So then they're going to know that you're about to fire them. That's why you need a 3 up front. Additionally, it is not only awkward, but if they quit, then you need a backup ready immediately. So you need to have multiple contractors with the same rationale as well. If you have a contract quits on you, you need to have multiple on standby so you can have very minimal delay in your work. So I would recommend have like 15. It just depends on what the type of work you need. Have a couple guys for drywall, a couple guys for plumbing, a couple guys for electrical. Just get them all in advance. So where do you organize all this information? I would recommend that you get it from Craigslist and you get, as many quality guys as you can, but I would make sure you organize it through Google Forms. Because if you say Craigslist, what's going to happen is they're going to just reply to your email, and you're going to have a ton of emails in your inbox, and it's not going to be well organized, and you're not able to really sift through, okay, well, who's good at what? But with Google Forms, it's very, very simple. Because you just say, okay, here's the skills that this guy has, and here's what his phone number it is, and here's where his rough location is. He's in XYZ city. He's willing to drive XYZ amount. Right, that's really useful stuff to have. You can just put all that in Google Forms. It takes them actually a lot faster than them trying to figure out what it is you want. So I would highly recommend do a Google Form with it as well. I'm going to create a template of that Google Form, by the way, and throw it up on preselling.com. I don't have a slide for a literal QR code yet, but that's something I do plan on making here very, very shortly. So very highly recommend. Do it all through Google Forms. Okay, post-close operations. So now you've closed your property. That's great. Time to save all your closing documents. So you need to save your HUD-1, which is your Housing and Urban Development Form number 1, basically. It's your standardized closing settlement statement. And then you need loan documents saved as well. And you also need the paper versions and the digital versions of any and all closing documents. The time to get it is at closing, not 2 years later when you hit up that attorney and say, hey, can I get that paperwork? They probably may or may not have it, right? Or if the office like catches on fire or something that's gone forever. So get all your closing paperwork and put it in a drive folder by scanning it all, and also keeping the paper versions as best as you can. Next item is you want to issue your tenant welcome packet. So you want to have all your key information in there, like, hey, here's how you contact property management, here's who the property manager is, etc. Here's how to pay rent, here's the system to use. Also, here's how to submit work orders if stuff breaks, because stuff is going to break. And you can assume that stuff will probably break as of day one, because there is a chance it can happen. So you need to be prepared for that. And then also, I would recommend that you specify what is not changing. You will have a lot of tenants that are not super familiar with how the landlord process of everything else works. They just want to live there and rent. So make it easy on them. Say, hey, if you currently have a lease, we're not changing anything, and our intention is not to come in and just jack up rent on you. Especially older tenants tend to have a little bit more concern when it comes to stuff like this. They say, oh, are you going to increase our rent like crazy? Just, appease them at the beginning by saying, hey, here's our plan. We'll plan on fixing everything up. We don't plan, for those of you that are paying higher than normal rents, we don't plan on increasing rent like crazy on you. Very simple to say. Also, include your utility company websites. Your tenants are probably already set up on that, but I would recommend you just go ahead and include this information in there now, because when you get a new tenant, you can just give them the same packet. Say, hey, welcome to the property. Here's your how-to checklist. And then they already have all their information in there for the utility company. So they're not asking you, because if they ask you a million times, you're going to have to answer that a million times. But if you just put it in there, they don't have to ask as much. All right, last item is getting your tenants onboarded. So what I mean by that is making sure they're in your property management system, or having your property manager handle this at least. I would highly recommend that you do a 10% first month discount for anybody that pays 5 days early through that new platform. What this will do is it will incentivize your tenants to say, hey, you got to pay rent either way. You got to do it this way. But instead of it being a bad thing, like, bam, extra, work, you got to go do all this extra stuff in order to go through it. You're like, hey, I'm going to just pay you if you are just a good tenant, right? You're just like tipping your tenant basically. So only do that for the first month would be my opinion. If you wanted to do that on recurring, you could always say 5% discount if you pay early. And that's a really good way to get instantaneous collections basically every single month guaranteed. That is a very good trick to do. It's up to you if you want to do that on multiple months, but I would recommend at least on your first month, do a minimum of 10%. It is going to avoid a ton of headaches, and people are not going to complain as much. Because if a tenant is having a new landlord that comes in, they're worried, they're scared, they don't know what's going to go on, they assume it's corporate greed. But if you're like, hey, I'm actually a really cool guy, I'm just going to give you 10% off. I'm like, that's really cool. And then all of a sudden you're on good terms with them. You're going to have a really good relationship with that tenant for the next 2+ years. Okay, how to communicate. If you are a business, you should communicate like a business, not personally texting people, and also not emailing or texting from your personal. So you are running a business, not a group chat. As a result, run everything through email. So I would say do it all through your LLC email if you're working with partners. If you really need to have a phone number, that's fine, but make sure you are only giving it out to the property management company, and have property management company be the only phone number that the tenants have. If the tenants have your phone number, they will absolutely call you to complain about everything. Additionally, with your company LLC, I would recommend that you have your company LLC's email available to tenants, but say, only contact me if you have an issue with property management. That is it. Is the only time that we will respond to it is if there's an issue with property management company, because you will need to evaluate if property management company is doing well or not. So if there's no way to get in contact with you at all, the property management company might suck and you might not ever know about it. Here's kind of what your email system through Gmail at least will look. You can do it on Outlook, you can do it on whatever. I would recommend you just make a bunch of Gmails, and you can just sign into a bunch of different accounts. So every time you buy a property, you should ideally be doing a new LLC, because it's a different structure and you got different partners potentially. But if you have the same partners, it's okay to use the same email multiple times. I would still recommend, though, that you do one email per new portfolio of properties that you're doing. That way it's very clear of like what issues are related where. It will just save you a lot more in the long run. With Gmail, you can have up to 10 emails all logged in at the same time. So I would highly recommend that you do a system like this until you get over 10. But at that point, you're probably pushing 300 plus units. So I think I currently have like roughly 10 set up right now. And it's a little bit to deal with, but I'll get into exactly the best ways to actually have those emails get workflowed through. So if you are having your meetings, you want to do a routine meetings. That's where all your general partners, also known sometimes as the board, But your general partners, the sweat equity guys, those guys should be meeting weekly. That means you as well. You are also going to most likely you're going to be the sweat equity guy. If you just want to fund the deals, that's great. Hit me up. My email's right there, team@presigning.com. Otherwise, if you are looking to actually work the deal and get equity as a result of your work, then you are a general partner. Make sure you're meeting at least once per week. Excuse me on that. I don't know why I was there on that. So use a software interface is highly recommended. Don't do a group chat like we talked about. Don't do an email. You could do a Zoom call, that's fine, but I would recommend you run everything through Discord, actually. It's free, kind of like Slack, but it's, again, free, and just use it for work purposes. Also, we have a community Discord where we even have work channels that you can just do it through. So I would recommend you use Discord for pretty much just work. If you have a gaming or whatever account, just make that separate. Okay, for your tasks, you would want to have a list of all of your tasks that you run over as well. And that's going to be throughout the week. People can look at it, and then you specifically are running over those during the meetings. So here's what your tasks are going to look like. And by the way, whoever's the email point of contact or the email lead person, that guy is going to be the person that is going to try to turn these into like taskers for people. And then it's the workflow point of contact who's going to run through the taskers. I talked about that on the previous module if you need a little refresher on that. So if you have your tasks, I would have a checkbox. Is it done? Who's in charge of it? Just like last module, we talked about 1, 2, and 3, and also having an X on there, depending on the roles and responsibilities hierarchy. So if you're a 1, you're the number 1 person in charge of that tasker. 2, you got to make sure that number 1 does it, and so on and so forth. That I would do the exact same thing for every single tasker. It's very clear of who needs to do what at that point. Also, have your priority in there. Is it a super urgent item, or is it maybe not so urgent, or is it even something that could just be done 3 months from now, right? That's what you need to include on there for your priority. You should also do the same thing with your date. What's the actual hard due date? Like, when is it actually due? Not when you'd like for it to be due. What is the actual hard due date? I would include that in there as well. Tasker name, we just say something very short and descriptive. List property with agent. Pretty straightforward. And if we need more context and more descriptions in there, we add that under notes. So here's why I like doing notes exactly like the way you see it on the screen, is you have a date and a record of who's typing what. Remember, everybody's logged in probably through the same email. So you need to actually make sure you're specifying who's typing what. But it's also really nice is I can see on there, starting on 220, it was person A found 3 acceptable agents, right? And then 221, person B found 2 more agents. So now we know who's doing what work. But imagine if it says person A started looking for agents, and then that's on 220. And then like 3 months later, they say, I found 1 agent. Now you know that person A is actually the guy that's slacking. And if you're person A, everybody else knows that too, and they will help hold you accountable. So this is a lot easier for everybody because it's very clear of who's done what and who's actually screwing up the tasker. Okay, files. Make sure you keep everything organized. If you have it downloaded on your computer, that sucks because nobody else has access to that if it's only downloaded on your computer. If it's sitting in your email inbox, it's also not well organized. Make sure you're doing it so other people can work with you. It's just part of being a good team player. So I have a free resource on presigning.com/resources, and it is a file structure on exactly how to organize all of your files. There's a lot of files that go into running a property. If you don't have a framework to put them into that's standardized for every single property, it gets to be really crazy, and you're going to not want to spend so much time just doing administrative cleanup. Like, where's that file? I don't know. It's like, what folder is it in? I'm not sure. So use a standard structure. That's the best way to move forward on it. By the way, previously I was military. The military uses a very similar system. They have like A1, A2, A3, J1, J2, J3. They have these different departments basically, where it's like A1 is personnel always. A4 is logistics. They handle all the logistical stuff. A7 is training, stuff like that. I just did the exact same thing for real estate. So you have like number 1 is legal and LLC. If it's anything legal, it goes in there. If it's for number 2, that's acquisition files. That's all the stuff you need for acquiring. 3 is for finance and tax. 4 is for different accounts. 5 is for management. 6 is for property records. And then 7 is when you finally dispo it, i.e. you get rid of the property. So I would recommend you make sure you do this. And honestly, I would consider doing something like this for your personal organization if you haven't done that yet. Okay, now we're going to talk about a master document. I call these MDocs. This is like the one-stop shop for everything. So if you keep all your information in one Google Sheet, not only will it keep it well organized for like your contacts and whatever else, but it's the one-stop shop for almost all data having to do with that particular property. It makes it really easy for everybody to understand what is going on with property. You just say, hey, here's the one document, and everybody just keeps it updated. That's where your tasks go. You're going to want to keep your contacts, a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you can't put it on your MDoc, put it on the MDoc. and do not have information in two different locations, because if I have tenant name for unit 34 is John Smith, and then over here it's Jim Bob, if it's for unit 34 as well, it's like, well, which one's real? I don't know. So just keep it updated in one spot, which is your MDOC. That is your one spot that should be the most accurate information all of the time. So a couple of different tabs that you can have in your one Google Sheet, which is called your MDOC, is going to be like LLC taskers, property management taskers, and unit data, profit and loss statement, your transactions, your debt schedule, your contacts, your administrative stuff, like, what's the property ID or whatever, right? You can put a lot of stuff in here and just keep it in one location so everybody has access to it and everybody can contribute. And I'm going to be releasing a free master doc system for free on preselling.com in the very near future. So go to preselling.com/resources and you'll be able to get this. It's probably going to be up by the time I actually upload this video, but if not, I'm probably taking my time because I want to make sure it's really good. Okay, now we're going to talk about the most efficient way to make repairs. R&M is repairs and maintenance. So that is going to be routine expenses associated with keeping up with the property. So that's going to be stuff like repairing a unit after someone moves out, filling up potholes, stuff like that. And that's written off as an expense. And from the tax standpoint, an expense is saying in this calendar year is what we're deducting it against our income. So you don't have to pay income on whatever amount of money you spent on an expense, right? That impacts your NOI though. You have to keep that in mind. So repairs and maintenance does get factored into the expense side of NOI. So it's going to not only reduce your property value technically, but it's also going to reduce your taxable income. So if you don't want it to be done like that, and it can be justified as a capital expenditure known as CapEx, then that's something that's in addition to the property. So it'd be like adding another building or paving the road. And these are written off via depreciation, not through expense. So the key difference is saying if I spend, I don't know, $50,000 on a road, and I'm saying that I'm going to depreciate that road over 5 years, then I basically get to say I'm going to write off $10,000 per year 5 times versus writing off $50,000 all in the same year. Why would you want to do this? Because maybe if you have $50,000 all in the same year for expenses, but you only have a $10,000 profit, now you're actually running at a negative, and there's not really like a good tax advantage to that. By the way, keep in mind everything I'm saying here, I'm not officially CPA, but I would like to think I'm reasonably tax inclined. So take it with a grain of salt. Make sure you're running all this by your CPA. This is not formal CPA advice. Okay, return on invested capital is a rarely understood concept, and it's amazing how many people screw this up and they just spend money on the wrong things. So this is the best way to run all expenses and all repairs on a property or even a business or whatever else, but mainly we're looking at it from a property standpoint. That is ROIC for an action is equal to either the positive or the negative value change divided by the cost in minus 1. So what this means is what is the percent return, or in this case, it's not expressed as a percent, we do it as a multiple, but what is the return on doing a certain action? So if I do something that costs $1 and it gets me $3 back, well, then that's a positive return, right? So I can actually calculate what that is. So here's what it looks like. And by the way, you got to remember that the change can be value actually added, value perceived, or even value lost that's been avoided. So here's an example. A water line costs $500 to replace. If a future buyer is going to look at it and say that's probably $1,000 actually to replace, by you spending the $500, you are having a positive return essentially, because you were saying, hey, the perception of value now increases by $1,000, which means they're not going to ask for a $1,000 price reduction if you're selling the property or something like that. So now it's $1,000 positive divided by the $500 repair cost minus 1 equals a 1x ROIC. What that means is I got a 100% return, i.e. a 1x. I get a 100% return on my $500 if I spend it, because I'm avoiding somebody from devaluing my property by $1,000, even though it only costs $500. So make sure you're doing the repairs that other people are going to assume are a lot more expensive. All right, here's another example. If I add a fence and it's going to cost $1,000, and a future buyer says, I don't even want the fence actually, it's going to cost me $500 to remove the fence because I really hate fences. Okay, fine. That's going to be $500 perceived value loss that they're saying, okay, I'm going to lose money if there's a fence there because I'm going to have to pay to get it removed, divided by the $1,000 cost to actually do it, then minus 1, that's a negative 0.5x ROIC. So it means I have a negative 50% return if I end up building that fence, because somebody's going to say, I don't even want the fence and I want to get rid of it. So positive or negative, pretty simple on that. Just make sure you're doing actions that are positive. But if you're doing actions that are positive, which ones do you do? Well, here's what the second layer to this argument looks like. So if a vacant unit costs $3,000 to get rent ready, and we're just going to assume 35% OPEX, 8 cap, and then $1,000 a month fair market rent, what it would look like is if I rented out that unit, I would get plus $1,000 a month times 12 months in a year equals $12,000 a year gross. If I apply a 35% OPEX, then that's saying 7.8K per year gross, or I'm sorry, 7.8K per year net. And then if I apply an 8 cap valuation to that, then that's almost $100,000 value change just by renting out that unit. So what was our repair cost? $3,000. So if I divide it by $3,000 and I subtract 1, then I get a 31.5x ROIC. That is a pretty good return. So that's saying for every dollar that I'm spending to get that rent ready, I'm getting 31.5x return on that. That's very good return. Stock market makes 8%. This is making a lot more than 8%. I can tell you that. It's 3,150 or whatever percent return. So it makes a lot of sense to do that. Okay, so now if we have a more complex situation, $1,000 a month tenant is going to say, I'm going to move out unless I get a $1,000 washer right now. Okay, so if they move out, it's going to be $3,000 to fix it up. And then you'd be able to re-rent that out for $1,200 because you're going to also be able to rent it out to a tenant who's not so demanding. But if you do a 35% OPEX, 8 cap, assumptions, here's what it looks like. Option A, you do no rehab and you don't do a washer and you say, I will not meet your demands. They absolutely will move out, which means loss of value. So negative $1,000 a month times 12 months equals $12,000 per year gross that you're missing out on. If you apply a 35% OPEX and you also apply an 8 cap, then it is a negative almost $100,000 change. You've just lost money. So now we're going to go to option C, which is they move and it's a $3,000 rehab. There's a gain of value. So that is plus $200 a month for rent. There's times 12 months in a year. That is 2.4K gross in a year. 35% OPEX on that. And then we also do an 8 cap on that equals $20,000 change roughly if a tenant moves out. If I divide that by the $3,000 rehab cost, then that is a 5.5 ROIC, right? So option A, they just move out. I don't do squat. Option B, they move out and I say, fine, I will rehab it. But then option B is if I just do the 1K washer, I avoided a loss of value. So if I avoid a loss of value, it's a $3,000 rehab avoided. And then I also have a 1K washer minus 1 equals a 2.0 ROIC. So you got to figure out what is best for you. Do you want the higher return, but you can only maybe get a high return if you have enough money, right? So that's saying what is the multiple on your cash that you'll end up spending on it. So in this scenario, it is only $1,000 for option B, but I get a 2.0 ROIC versus option C is a significantly higher percent return, but now I got to go spend the money on the rehab. And I probably, which I didn't include in here, but I probably need to buy a new washer too. Okay, so let's put some real application of this. This is an incredibly crappy unit that we bought like this, and we were getting through all of our different units. And we're like, we need to rehab this so that we can get somebody in here. This is obviously vacant. We don't treat our tenants like that. So our normal, the normal approach would just be to fix everything up, right? $8,000 to fix this up, and then we do $800 a month off of that. So at a 50% OPEX and a 10 cap, which is kind of market for something like this, see day one for more details if you need more clarification on OPEX and cap rate. So at $800 a month increase times 12 months in a year, that's 7.2 gross. If I apply 50% OPEX, that's 4.8 net. And then if I call it a 10 cap, then that's a 48K positive value change. Fair market value change is now increased by approximately 50K. So if I divide that by 10K rehab that we would end up doing, then that would be 8x ROIC. So we will quintuple our money. If we put money in, we technically will get a 6x on gross, but it doesn't matter. The net return that we'll get is 5x. So there's a better solution. We got it to look like this, but we did it for basically nothing. Here's what we did. We just marketed it and we said, hey, anybody that wants this, they can have it for $1. And then we're going to just ask that you pay $400 a month. This was a mobile home, so there's lot rent and there's home rent. So the guy just was saying, hey, we just want you to own the trailer, but we just want to get paid the lot rent. That's it. So for something like that, we don't have to deal with the repairs and maintenance on it. So it's a lower OPEX, and it's easier for the next guy to run if we were to sell the park. So then it's an 8 cap, is what would be more fair. So It's a positive $400 a month because it wasn't doing anything before, and now we're able to rent it for $400 a month. So that's 4.8K gross, and then out of 30% OPEX, that's 3.36 net. Apply an 8 cap factor, now you have 42K fair market value increase. By the way, the last one was 48K. This is 42, so slightly lower. However, we only spent $10 on marketing. So minus 1 equals 4,199x on cash. So we made a lot of money on that, right? Because we spent $10 and we basically got $42,000. So you tell me, yeah, we can technically make more money if we wanted to, and we can go coordinate all that work, and we can make a $48,000 return by spending $8,000, or we could just give it away for free and then say, somebody else have this, just pay us lot rent, that's fine. And that's exactly what we did, and we ended up making a ton of money on it. And we did it for a significantly more efficient rate than if we were actually repairing it all ourselves. So yeah, sometimes it pays to be insanely generous and just say, here's a free house, just pay us lot rent, that's all we want. So 4,199x ROIC. So execute everything in order of highest to lowest, obviously. So if you have something that's going to do a 20x on cash, and you have something that's going to do a 5x on cash, you should probably do the 20x thing on cash first before you spend a bunch of money on the 5x on cash. Just logically makes sense. But most people don't take the time to actually calculate what the ROIC for any given action is. So before you swing a hammer, or before you order somebody to swing a hammer, make sure you're actually calculating that. And leasing out a rent-ready unit has basically no cost other than like minimal fees if you do something like that, right? There's a ROIC calculator I will be creating and throwing up on presailing.com/resources at some point in time in the future, which will hopefully give you a couple of common repairs that you could do and or CapEx items, etc., along with their associated ROICs on there. So you should probably just execute them from highest to lowest. But if you have a custom one, you can just calculate it. So I'm going to be incorporating that here in the near future, 100% for free. So please do it. It is free. Information is one thing, but application is everything. So if you've not already done it, you should probably join the community Discord so that you can get access to the free weekly events we have going on there every single week. There's QR code there on the screen. That's where you're probably going to want to find all your business partners, because that's where all the business partners are. And actually, I've met almost all of my business partners online, believe it or not. And I met them mostly through Discord. So highly recommend that you go ahead and join this. It's 100% free. And that's where you're going to be able to find accountability buddies, where you can actually go through and have somebody like watching your back to make sure that you're doing your job while you watch their back to make sure they do theirs. If you have not learned a single thing or thought about anything remotely differently, then your parents must love you because you're really teachable. Your significant other must love you because you are a great listener, and your kids love you because you must be loaded. Otherwise, I need you to pay me. Here's the ways that you can pay me. 40 seconds of positive or negative feedback. You can send this video to somebody who's probably going to end up becoming your business partner one day if you just send it to them, because you're going to give them free value, hopefully. And then you can also just subscribe, which is going to be doing time-sensitive, exclusive resources that I'm going to drop on various different social platforms that is only going to be for that one platform, and it's going to be like 24 hours. If you don't watch it within 24 hours, you don't get it, you're not going to get the resource. You can also just join the community where we do networking events, resource deals, all sorts of great stuff, and we got something special coming for our earliest joining members. So I would highly recommend that you join before I apply that cutoff, because everybody before that cutoff is going to get the super secret something, and then everybody after is probably going to have to pay for it or whatever I'm going to end up doing. Who knows? Or you can just send me $15,000. There's my cash app. I'm just kidding. It's free. Everything's on presailing.com. Hope you enjoy this video. Make sure you keep on learning. Also, last item, by the way. Sorry, I was like too ahead of myself. There's a auto due diligence tool that you should absolutely use. So if you scan that QR code and you use this resource for free, it will calculate in less than 30 seconds whatever the factors are that you need to learn, such as wholesaling laws, landlord laws, what is the FEMA flood zone map, what are the risks of natural weather disasters, what is fair market rent. All of it's 100% free, and it does it automatically, just emails you a report. Great fun resource to use. Highly recommend you do it every time on every property. Thanks so much.